Brooklyn Nets, KD and Cliff, next duo.
That would be very interesting.
That would be interesting for sure. But yeah,
I do have Giants under 6.5 wins on the season, so I was glad to see the Giants lose.
Smart bet. Coming from a Giants fan, smart bet.
It looked like the easiest money I've ever made in my life, and they start off 2-0, and I'm starting to think that I need to hedge this. But
see,
so
I like no
I always
hope.
have that debate.
I like no hope because last night I walked into the game thinking like we can win this and go through and be 3-0, like and be an undefeated team after 3 weeks, and then reality.
Yeah, but that hope. That kernel of hope you have is like that's the whole point of being a sports fan. That's the whole point. Why are you protecting your feelings? You could hold that beautiful kernel of hope. And look, yeah, they're gonna lose and it's gonna suck and you're gonna feel like garbage for a day or two. But next week you always have that kernel.
Oh, I did not protect my feelings. Everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keeping Score with Dylan and Jack, a podcast show dedicated to bringing analysis of Rutgers sports and sports around the country. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Jack.
And today we have a very special guest, Brian Fonseca of NJ Advanced Media. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Brian, of course, a Targum alum, so always great to have, the network of Targum writers, editors come back. Today we'll be talking about Rutgers football. We'll be doing a preseason look at Rutgers basketball, and per Jack's request,
yes,
we'll be talking about the NFL at the end.
See my shirt?
Unfortunately, but we'll start with Rutgers football. Obviously, a tough loss on Saturday. One of the biggest crowd I've ever seen as a student. Reported 53,000 people at the stadium. Me and Brian were both there in the press box. Jack was there on the field giving out TVs, which was pretty cool to see. But Brian, I'll go to you first. I think the defense showed a lot of signs of improvement, but ultimately, Evan Simon had a tough time in his first primetime game.
Yeah, the stat line was a bit deceptive. 300 yards seems like a lot against probably the best defense in the Big Ten, but a lot of that came at the end when the game was it was 17-3 at halftime. It was pretty much over at that point. And his offense, but a lot of the issues came from his offensive line. Had a tough time. Got hit like 15 times between sacks and quarterback hits. And it's his second start. It's a second start. It's a huge jump from Temple to Iowa. I think. And the defense was fine, but we also have to keep in mind that Iowa had, as bad as Rutgers' offense is, Iowa was almost as bad, if not worse.
Yeah.
So that you have to take into account too. So it's probably the worst performance of the season. Maybe you can say Temple because Temple's a lot worse than Iowa. But it's tough. It's a tough way to start the Big Ten, and then they're going to Columbus on Saturday, which is not any easier. They're probably going to start 0-2, but the meat of the schedule gets a bit easier after that.
Yeah, on top of that, Brian, you said in your film review that, Evan Simon's performance doesn't look as bad as it might have looked in the real time on Saturday night. He really did get lit up on a lot of plays.
Even on the pick six, he got blown up. Yeah. Oh, it was bad.
I mean, Greg Schiano said he is a tough son of a gun. So, going back to that game and looking back, as kind of Schiano said, I'm not as upset with the offense based on the circumstances, right? Evan Simon is a third-string quarterback. He would be the third-string guy if Vedral and Wimsatt were healthy. He was thrown into a tough situation with a developing offense against an elite of the elite defense in the country. We're not talking about Big Ten, in the country. So with that in context, the offensive performance has a little bit of grain of salt to it, right? And the defense, Brian, I listen to your Rutgers Rant podcast. Rutgers Rant, listen to it. If you don't, you're not a Rutgers fan for sure. But the Rutgers defense is definitely his calling card, and I think that they really showed out on Saturday. I thought they played decently. They gave up 13 points. I know Iowa scored 27. 14 of those were not the defense's fault. And that's gonna be the reason Rutgers succeeds, in my opinion. Moving forward into the season, it's gonna be their defense. The offense is always gonna be lagging behind, at least at this point. And just walking away from that Iowa game, obviously a disappointing result. Great atmosphere for a night game, new lights and all that, but could have wished for a better result. But as Greg Schiano said, it's a process.
I think and he kind of touched on this in this press conference too. That the 3-0 start, the result. The 3-0 looks a lot better than they actually played. Again, you look at the teams they played. Wagner, any FBS team should beat Wagner. Temple, they did not play very well, which was an obvious signs of the issues that were to come. And Boston College, a team that it looked like an awesome win, a tremendous win in week one. We've seen Boston College play like garbage, frankly, the 3 weeks after. So I think they're the victims of their own success. I mentioned this on the podcast, but starting off 3-0 puts expectations high for people that maybe aren't paying as close attention, because the reality is there are only, there's a small group of diehard Rutgers fans who pay attention, watch every game, read all the analysis, and there are people that see Rutgers 3-0. Let me go check out them. Let me check them out. They think Iowa's not ranked. They hear about Iowa's bad offense. They're 2-1. They think this is a chance for Rutgers to pull off the upset. So I think some of those warped expectations played into it. I think Rutgers is 3-1 is probably where they should be. It's I think it's good. I think in the sense that people would sign up for this in the preseason. I think they're in a good spot. They just kind of have to recalibrate, which I think Greg Schiano tried to do on Monday, just recalibrate expectations. And look, again, they're going to lose to Ohio State. I think if they beat Ohio State, I think everyone understands this. If they beat Ohio State, it'd be one of the greatest upsets in the history of college football.
Not the tune-up game you were describing on Twitter.
Not exactly. No, that was.
I was literally writing my football keys to the game this week, and one of them was keep everyone healthy, and I had to start it off with let's be realistic.
Yeah,
come on.
You got to be. Look, this is not to the same degree, but in the sense that Rutgers knew they were going to beat Wagner. I think Ohio State knows they're going to beat Rutgers. Not to say that Ohio State is overlooking Rutgers or any of that stuff. It's just the talent discrepancy is so big. They're 41-point underdogs for a reason. It is what it is. The point of going there is keeping everyone healthy. Look, if you're competitive for a half, that's a huge win for Rutgers. Frankly,
right.
It just
100%.
They've performed better against Ohio State under Schiano than any other coach as far as results go. If you can keep it close, within 3 scores at halftime, keep everyone healthy, I think that's a win. And then really the Nebraska game is a really, really big game. That Nebraska game and Indiana game are, essentially the season. You have to win at least one. If you win 2, you have a real chance of going to a bowl game.
I absolutely agree. I will say that was one of the funniest tweets of Saturday when you came out after the game. It was like, luckily Rutgers has a get back game on Saturday. But going off your point, Brian, I want to talk more about the season at large and what we've been seeing from especially the quarterback situation, because obviously that's one of the big talking points. Dylan and I have our different opinions on where Rutgers should go if all 3 are healthy at the same time.
Well, I said what I said about Evan Simon, and I do stand by it. Over the first 3 games, he showed the most. He was the most accurate quarterback. And I love Gavin, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But when you're winging interceptions against Wagner, I'm sorry, it's not a good look. But I wanted to ask you about that, Ryan, because we saw both Wimsatt and Vedral warm up on Saturday. From my perspective, it was, I think they're going to see some action. But what do you think do you think there was, maybe they come in, or do you think it was, they're healthy enough to dress at least?
Well, they were healthy enough to dress. I think it's probably a combination of, you're playing a team that's going to get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. That was obvious. I think unless your guy is 100% healthy, you can't throw him out there against Iowa. Obviously, Evan Simon took, like you guys mentioned, some shots. And if a guy's injured and he takes those shots, you don't know if he's going to be able to come out. You don't know if it's going to exacerbate any. Again, unless they're 100% healthy, which you have to assume that the fact that Evan Simon played the entire game
that they weren't
able to play, right? And I wonder too. I asked this to Greg Schiano. I kind of bumbled my way through the question, but I was curious: how much do you risk playing if let's say Noah Vedral is 90% back? He could play. He was throwing passes in warmups against Iowa, but if he's not 100%, do you risk putting him out there and maybe getting hurt in a game that really you're again? This is not being.
They're going to lose to Ohio State.
It's not being disrespectful. This is just.
It's going to happen.
It's just you have a very low chance of winning.
It's a matter of fact.
Yeah, you have a very low chance of winning that game, right? So do you put in that guy? Do you risk their health too? And Schiano said he wouldn't risk anybody's health against anybody, right? So that tells me that unless they're 100% healthy, it's probably going to be Evan Simon again. Now, who should play if they're all 3 are healthy is a different question. I think it depends. Maybe my answer will be different in the preseason versus what it is now. We're really just dealing in hypotheticals here. I don't know, and until all 3 of them are healthy and we can really have a concrete example, I don't know if I have a concrete answer for you.
Right. Yeah, and kind of bouncing off that. I actually have a question for you, Brian. Based on what you've seen throughout the first 4 games it is now, what group on offense or defense you think has been the strongest? Whether it be the quarterbacks, wide receivers on offense, and then either the DBs, linebackers on the defense. What groups have really stood out for you so far?
I thought the defensive line is probably the best unit on the team. I think it's pretty obvious. They're deep. They're really talented. They're young, so they have a lot of guys who are going to develop into even better players moving into 23 or 24. The years that you'd think that the young talent that Shiano has recruited, developed to a point where they can all be, reliable, good contributors on a good Big Ten team. I think the linebackers have not been the best, but they've been the most impressive in that a lot of the preseason talk we had, all of us, was, will they be enough? They lose a lot of experience. They have an injury to Moses Walker. Drew Singleton's not coming back because the NCAA didn't reinstate him. And I think Tyrone Powell has been excellent. I think he looks the part, and he's been playing the way he looks. He's been tremendous. I think Deion Jennings has been rock solid. I think those two have been as good as anyone could have hoped for Rutgers. And the running back rotation has been good. They won them, and the offensive line won the game against Boston College. I think they still have not. While they have a lot of good guys, I think they're still missing that one bell cow guy you can depend on. I think Sam Brown could eventually grow into that guy. I don't know if he's quite there yet. The offensive line has struggled. I think they masked that against. Greg Schiano said something to the effect on Monday that when you play a team like Ohio State, when you play good teams, you could kind of mask your deficiencies. When you play great teams like Ohio State, that becomes an issue that they really take advantage of. So, when you were having deficiencies against Temple, you could really get away with it, and then you play a defense like Iowa, it gets exposed. To answer your question this long-winded way, defensive line has been most impressive, has been the best position unit. Linebacker has been the most impressive based on preseason expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the running backs. I think the running backs, I've been definitely impressed on the offensive side. Just seeing them dominate the game against Boston College. I know what you said about different teams and their skill sets, obviously. But I think as we've had such a skew between the teams that we've played in the first 3 games, and then of course Iowa in Game 4. But I think when you're looking at as a whole, I think defensive line and I have to say running backs for the offense. Dylan, you got anything to add on this?
I just think the secondary has a lot of young players that I'm very interested in seeing. Robert Longerbeam, obviously against lesser competition, has really, he showed a lot of development late in last season, and it looks like this season that he's becoming like a Big Ten.
He's had so many drop picks this year.
But that's a pass deflection right there. You got to look at it one way, you got to look at the other. Max Melton obviously coming back from, we'll just say, the incident last year. He's looked good as well, and we'll see what happens. This week is going to be their biggest test. They're going to have to cover Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., and I don't really think anyone expects them to do that, but, it'll be nice if they could show some fight, and, I think that's a young part of the defense that can really show up later this season and possibly next season, and then, I'd have to agree with you guys, the running backs room. I think Kyle Monungai, showed a lot last year, and I think he's continuing to show a lot. Al-Shadi Salam is a guy who I didn't really know what I was going to see this season, and obviously had the game-winning touchdown against BC, and, having running backs that can kind of make their own space and be power runners like we saw, obviously with the newly NFL Isaiah Pacheco who just got drafted, I see a lot of him in Monungai, downhill guy, runs over people, and I think there's a lot of improvement that can come from there. I think the biggest deficiency on offense is obviously the O-line and unfortunately a quarterback play, but that's just how it is.
And I guess to wrap up this football segment of the show, I want to talk about the season at large, moving away from what we've seen from the first 3 games and Ohio State and beyond. It's a really simple question. So if Rutgers ends the season going bowling, going to whatever bowl game, 6 wins plus, it's because of blank. And what I mean by that, it's the offense flips a switch and they find a way to become productive against Big Ten teams where they get the 6 wins. Whether it be the defense turns into, the Legion of Boom or something like that and really starts dominating. We know they're good, but maybe they come elite. If Rutgers goes bowling and maybe knocks off, one of those teams in the gauntlet from late October to late November, what's going to be the reason why?
I think the defense, as long as it doesn't take a step down, we're going to assume that they are the catalyst for this team's success, right? They're going to win because of their defense. And then you have to hope that the offense picks up, a couple levels and is good enough to win you games. I don't know. The biggest thing is not losing games the way that they lost Iowa, giving away 14 points off offensive turnovers. That's the biggest thing. There's a reason Schiano plays the balls of the program every practice for 10 minutes over the loudspeakers. It's important. And when you're a team like Rutgers, you really can't afford, at the point where they are in their rebuild, you can't afford to beat yourself. So if the offense plays clean ball, if the defense continues to play well, if they can have a huge defensive turnover, turn touchdown like they did against Temple, that would be helpful. And they just have to win their winnable games. I don't think there's any You can't bank on them beating Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. I mean, those seem very unrealistic. Those three teams have been playing really well. I think preseason, I would have said that Michigan State was in that group. They've looked awful, so I think they're winnable. But I would flip them with Minnesota, who looks awesome. Minnesota looks like the best team in the Big Ten West, one of the best teams in the Big Ten. PJ Fleck has them rolling, so I would flip those two teams. There's 4 winnable games left if you count Indiana, Nebraska, Maryland, and Michigan State.
Indiana and Nebraska are the 2. Those are like, if we don't get both of them, it's gonna be almost insurmountable.
I would agree. You need at least one. And 2 would go a long way, and you could have a mulligan against Michigan State and go to Maryland. Though Maryland is really good, and Rutgers has struggled against Maryland historically. But yeah, but beyond the bowl stuff, the bowl is obviously the goal. Like, it's what they want. But the most important thing, even if they don't make a bowl and go 5-7, is you see progress. You see one of the quarterbacks, whether that's Evan Simon or Gavin Wimsatt, take a step and kind of emerge as the guy. I don't know if that's reasonable or fair to expect given all the injuries and the offensive line mishaps. The offensive line, you'd like to see them kind of gel because a lot of these guys are coming back for another year at least. The better they get, that would be a huge sign if you can get 4 guys in that line consistently playing well. The young players on defense getting better, just see progress all over the field and seeing you go to the game against Maryland thinking, all right, these guys have another year, another offseason, they're working together. You can envision next fall this being a team that the expectation should be a bowl game. Whereas this year, I think a bowl game would be seen as a bonus instead of the expectation. I think that's fair to say.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my preseason prediction, I had them at about 5-7, and it still kind of holds up. Obviously, in addition to those being winnable games, I mean, there are 2 big atmospheres. Nebraska is a Friday night game that is not going to be as packed as Iowa, but there's going to be a lot of people. And then Indiana's homecoming. So, if you lose one of those 2, it's going to be tough to bring fans back for Michigan. It's going to be tough to bring fans back for Penn State. I mean, fans will come for Penn State. We hate Penn State here, but
I do think they have a chance to amend those if they win, for example, at Minnesota. But to your point, yes. If you're losing to Nebraska or Indiana at home, it's hard to envision a road win.
It's tough because I think Rutgers can have an advantageous game day situation like we saw against Iowa. I don't know if it was 53,000 people there, but I digress.
What's the capacity of SHI?
53, 5 or something like that.
It was a technical sellout.
It was community day, so they gave away a lot of tickets to local groups, and it was I'd probably guess 48, 49.
It was definitely packed.
It was a good atmosphere.
It was
the most tickets they've ever sold since I've been a student here, and this is my 5th year. It's the most packed game I've ever seen.
Light show was awesome too.
The light show was awesome. Whoever did that in the behind the scenes Rutgers AV, bang up job, but. Ultimately, Nebraska, Indiana, they should be both of them.
I wouldn't say they should. I think those are the. I don't think Rutgers should be anybody aside from Wagner, Temple.
Fair.
But to your point, yes, they're the 2.
In terms of the Big Ten, they are the 2 most winnable games, and then, you need to beat a team like Michigan State or Maryland, which is tough because last year we came into the last game, 5-6 against Maryland, and it looked winnable, and they blew us out. So
and Maryland got better.
Yeah, and Tagovailoa looks great. I mean, the offense looks great. The defense has improved. So I still think they're 5-7, but ultimately, they gave Greg Schiano the keys to the kingdom for a long time because they know that it's a long process. He's done the process before. He took over Rutgers in 2000 when they were one of the worst Power 5 teams. He took them over again when they were one of the worst Power 5 teams. So, it's time, it's recruiting, it's now NIL, it's the transfer portal. Improvement is the most important thing. A bowl game would be great and would probably help out all those things, but I think 5-7 is where they're going to sit, unfortunately. I don't see them making a bowl.
I think 5-7 would be I think I predicted 3-9, so 5-7 would be maybe I think 4-8 was probably the best, most realistic outlook. At 5-7, I think they would be happy again, so long as all those improvements are obvious by the end of the year. That's the biggest thing above all. The record is nice. It's important. Obviously, you want to win every game, etc. But the biggest thing is improvement across as many units as you could possibly get.
I echo everything you guys said. I know in the beginning of the season, I thought the same thing. The same record as last year, or around the same record, which would land me at 5-7 or 4-8, like you guys said. Obviously, 2 big games coming up, like you guys said, with Nebraska and Indiana, Ohio State. See what happens on Saturday. Hope for the best. But a team at Rutgers that has pretty much owned Nebraska and Indiana is the basketball team, and we're on the heels
I think a
of
lot of the Big Ten basketball teams own Nebraska lately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've done with Bryce
We're-
McCallum.
I don't know if I'd call it say own them. They almost lost to them 2 years in a row. They did beat them, but I would
win.
They did beat them.
All right.
own the
But,
state of Indiana. But
we're on the heels of a new basketball season. They started basketball started practice yesterday actually, and we are very close. We are almost a month away from their opener against Columbia at Jersey Mike's Arena. Should be a lot of fun. Brian, I know you. I don't know if you specialize, but I know you started with basketball before you moved to General Rutgers. So it's big season coming up. It's going to be a very different team. And just to start off this conversation about Rutgers basketball, kind of with my general thoughts of the team going into this season, I think that it could have been worse. I think the offseason could have gone worse when the season ended against Notre Dame in March. I kind of thought, like, oh, man, like, you know, what's this team going to look like? How many guys are going to leave? And at the end of the day, we still kept Cliff. We still kept Paul. And Caleb Mcconnell came back, which was huge. We obviously knew we were going to lose Gio and Ron, and they didn't lose anyone to the transfer portal. So I think all things considered, I think it could have been worse. And you combine that with the fact with the Big Ten being a lot weaker compared to last year. So I think we really lucked out in that sense. But with the team as a whole, I'm just going to be honest. I think the offense is going to be something to watch, to put it lightly. Just something to watch. When you lose your top two scorers, that's really hard. But Brian, as you know, the Rutgers offense has a history of stagnating and having trouble getting points, and now that is amplified with your two best scorers and players now gone. Now you're relying on guys like Paul Mulcahy, who was a great playmaker and point guard, but not necessarily the best scorer. Cam Spencer was a wild card, great shooter, but we don't really know what he's going to bring. Cliff Amore, he's a big. I mean, he's obviously going to be able to get points in the middle and maybe expand his game, but we don't really know that. And he's a big. And then you got guys like Andre Hyatt, Dean Reber, Caleb Mcconnell. Obviously, I forgot. Caleb McConnell's good for a 30-point game in March, but across the season, we don't really know. So, Brian, any general thoughts so far on the team going forward, and anything you got?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see Cliff. He's getting a lot of buzz preseason.
Yeah.
A lot of people are Hoops, Dylan Burkhart. He does a great job. He's one of the guys in the Big Ten writers circle that I trust the most in evaluations. He put Cliff at number 5 in the Big Ten as far as returning players. So I think the buzz is legit. I think Cliff has grown every year. I think he
can be legit a first-round pick if things go well this year.
That I will reserve. That's a lot. I mean, Ron Harper Jr. was one of the top 10 players in program history, maybe, and he barely got drafted. I think they're obviously different players, different skill sets. What happened to one doesn't necessarily mean the other. If he does expand his game, his shooting range, as they've said, which they also said last offseason, and that didn't really show itself. He shot more times, but he wasn't like a consistent 3-point shooter. If he does expand his range and he shoots at a decent clip, then yes, he's a surefire. I will reserve judgment until I see him play, but I really am excited to see him play. I think he could be top 2, top 3 big men in the Big Ten for sure. I think he already was a top 5, 6 big in the Big Ten by the end of last year. Caleb McConnell, I know a lot of people are excited about the way he played against Notre Dame, the offense. He played really well against Clemson in the NCAA tournament the year before too. If he develops and builds on that and makes that more of a consistent thing, it will be very huge for this team, like you said. Offense will be lagging, at least on paper. I think Cam Spencer, I am optimistic about what Cam Spencer can bring.
I just don't really know much about him. I know Paul said over the summer he's the best shooter he's ever seen.
Right.
I would love for him to fit and I bring this player up every time I talk about Rutgers. I'd love for him to fit in a Quasi Aboa type role where he can come off the bench and just be like a sharpshooter. Because I don't know. I just love that about a guy who can come off the bench and just heat up immediately. I think that's one of the best traits a bench guy can have. I'd love to see him slot in that kind of role.
I don't know if he comes off the bench, I think it would be a disappointment. I think he got recruited here to be a starter, be a guard that replaces Geo Baker in that rotation. Not necessarily the same kind of player, but in that role of because I don't think he's playing point guard. It will be Paul Mulcahy playing point guard, but he'll be a guy who'll shoot. He's a savvy player. The question is always, will he be able to physically transition from the Patriot League, which is obviously a huge jump.
Right.
We won't know that until he plays in the Big Ten. I am optimistic about his skill set, his competitiveness, all the intangibles, which you could put in as much stock as you want into those. The same thing you could put in stock into what every preseason quote. Everyone in the preseason, everyone's the greatest player of all time across every team, across every sport. That's just the way it is. But I am excited to see Cam, and I'm excited to see some of the young guys. I'm excited to see the development. Steve Peichel always seems to get a lot out of these guys, develop them every offseason. I'm excited to see guys like Andre. This is his second year in the program. Mawat Mag. I'm excited to see him if he's able to stay healthy. When he was healthy last year,
I'm high on Mawat Mag. I think he's got a lot of potential.
I am as well. I thought every time he was healthy and able to string games together, he was really good in that Purdue game. I think as long as he can keep his teeth in his mouth, the poor guy's dealt with so much. I feel awful for the kid, really.
Yeah.
If he's able to, I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't assume, I think he is probably beyond those. As long as he doesn't get another elbow to the face, I think he'll be able to kind of sustain through that. And I think if he gets consistent playing time, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did, right? The 4 spot is wide open. If he gets a decent amount of minutes and is able to get some continuity, I am really excited to see where he is at. But yeah, I mean, we're a month away. It feels like it was just yesterday we were in Dayton and now we're back. So yeah.
Looking forward to it, Dylan. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of like Brian said, there's a lot of development on this team, and Peichel, sometimes he does get criticized for the way he recruits. I personally don't agree with people who say that, but it is out there. You read Rutgers Rival, you see everything, but I think there's a lot of guys who can come. I'm really excited to see Dean Reber again. He showed flashes of being like a stretch 4, stretch 5 that is really important and not really. It's pretty rare in college basketball to see that. So I'd be really excited to see him. I'm excited to see Mawat Mag. I'm excited to see Jalen Miller if he could take a step forward offensively, because I think defensively we know that he's going to be pretty locked down. It's a lot of the Rutgers players I think are recruited because they're very good on defense, and I think if you can get more offensively than you're expected to, you're going to have a very good team. Obviously Cliff. I think Cliff is going to be a double-double machine. I think he's going to be one of the most exciting players in the entire conference and maybe the entire country to watch. I don't know if he's a first-round pick. I think his shot is a little too raw.
See, this is what I see.
His physicality, I think, is there, but like the way the NBA is now, you gotta shoot threes. You gotta at least have a mid-range game. You gotta pass. Like I don't know if he has all that.
When I see Cliff, I see Clint Capella, the guy who played on the Rockets with James Harden and Chris Paul. He was the rim runner in that offense, and Cliff is an elite rim runner. He has the athleticism. He's able to get off his feet and work like that. So I don't know. That's where I just see the athletic ability.
No disrespect to Clint Capella, but I don't know if a Clint Capella type is gonna go in the first round now. Like he's a great player. He's a great player. Like those Rocket teams are great, but I don't know if NBA scouts are looking for a Clint Capella.
Right.
I do think he'll make the league. I think he'll have a role in the league somewhere. I don't know. I don't know where he'll get drafted. I would bet on him getting drafted. I don't know where, but I think the potential is there. The growth he's shown throughout the years. If he can maintain that trajectory, I agree with you guys. That NBA guy.
Brooklyn Nets, KD and Cliff, next duo.
That would be very interesting.
That would be interesting for sure. But yeah, Steve Peichel's going to have his guys ready to play defense. I don't doubt that for a second. Although they have been lacking on the rebounds, especially on the rebounding, especially these past couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see how the team shakes out. They're going to definitely have to be able to defend at a high level with an offense that's lacking guys like Gio and Ron now. And I guess that's a quick segue to wrap up this basketball segment. Brian, I want to ask you real quick if you heard anything about Ron Harper Jr. As obviously, NBA Media Day was yesterday for a lot of teams. Training camp is now beginning. I didn't know if you heard anything about Ron Harper Jr. and how he might figure into the Toronto Raptors.
I have not, truthfully. I've been really wrapped up in Rutgers football stuff, but I did see that they were doing uniform photo shoots. I saw he was having a good time with that on his Instagram stories. Seems like he's having a good time, so I'm excited to see the kind of role he gets. I have to think that you know a lot more about the NBA than I do. I really don't know much. I have to think that he'll get a decent amount of games, 20 games this season. I don't know if Toronto's supposed to be good or not.
Toronto is supposed to be good.
Okay,
they're.
Really?
Yeah, Toronto. I mean, Toronto's Toronto. They're just one of those teams that'll hang around and be one of the
Nick Nurse coach team.
Yeah, they're just a very well coached team. I will say him going to the Raptors, I'm extremely happy about because that's a team that really prides himself on G League development and getting guys that were under the radar prospects and getting them to NBA, maybe not stardom in some cases, but NBA role player capabilities. Pascal Siakam is a star in this league. Fred VanVleet, undrafted out of Wichita State. He's played really well. Chris Boucher is another one of those guys. And even guys like Scotty Barnes that they drafted high in the draft, number 4 in 2021. he was high drafted, but he was rookie of the year. And if you know anything about the NBA last year, no one was saying Scotty Barnes, here he goes. No. So, I'm really happy for Ron, and I really hope for the best of him. And, we'll wrap up this podcast with something.
And that's all for today. Be sure to join us. No. I'll let you get your time, Jack. I'll let you get your time.
Yeah, because, we were at an unspecified location at Rutgers University, and I was getting screamed at by a lot of Giants fans because they were really happy that
I didn't tell people to join in. They just naturally join in. That's what you get for rooting for the Cowboys. But
I'm used to it. I'm a Cowboys fan who lives in New Jersey, so that's what happens. But huge win for the Cowboys. They won 23-16 last night against the New York Giants. It was a wild game. I mean, seeing MetLife Stadium in a whiteout, as you said, McCoy, it was a lot of fun to, see that atmosphere. And, I'm just happy we won. I'm just happy we won because it was a really rough start to the season with Dak Prescott going down and, all that stuff. I was really down on the team, especially after the San Francisco loss in the playoffs. Dak getting hurt in the first game did not help my spirits. So, happy we won. Now we got the Commanders coming up in Week 4. And Dylan, if it's not too painful, what's your thoughts on the Giants game?
I gotta say, Danny Dimes stepped up. Like, he had a lot of problems. The offensive line was not helping him out. Evan Neal had a really bad game. I mean, he's a rookie. We saw Andrew Thomas have a really bad rookie season. They developed, so I still have faith in him. But the offensive line didn't really step up. His wide receivers, weren't doing too much. Unfortunately, Sterling Shepard tore his ACL. So
that was so weird. I'm like,
artificial grass, MetLife, please. So many people get injured at MetLife. Man. Yeah, but ultimately the defense wasn't the same without Leonard Williams, which I think everyone could have expected. And the Giants aren't going to be that great. I don't think Dallas is going to be that great either this season. We'll see how they are when they get Dak Prescott
our defense
back,
is legit, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have a guy like Michael Parsons who's like a generational talent on the edge, I don't think it's going to be hard to deal with him. But I was pretty mad last night. I hate losing to the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys 10-1 in their last 11 against the Giants. But you haven't
beaten Dak since my sophomore year.
Coming back
school,
to earth this morning and looking at it, it could have been a lot worse. I think DJ played really well. He ran the ball really well. I'm not very high on him. I think the Giants are going to have a new quarterback in a couple weeks in Tyrod Taylor. But, he did a good job, and the offensive line just needs to play a little better, and the defense needs to play a little better. That's about it.
Brian, you got a stake in this game?
No. I do have Giants under 6.5 wins on the season. So I was glad to see the Giants lose.
Smart bet. Coming from a Giants fan, smart bet.
It looked like the easiest money I've ever made in my life, and they start off 2-0, and I'm starting to think that I need to hedge this, but we shall see. I don't know. Yeah, that's my only stake in the game. I watched a little bit of it. I feel bad for Sterling Shepard. I mean, that sucks, man. It poor guy.
Yeah.
Hoping he's better, and I guess Kenny Golladay should have made that catch, but
he shouldn't make any catch if he's getting paid that much money.
I don't know, but the money thing is different. It's saying that you deserve more playing time, which I mean, fair enough. If you think you should get more playing time, I'm all about guys saying that to the media. It's just when you get an opportunity like that, you got to make that catch.
I just think there's no way that he's showing out in practice and stuff all week for him to play 2 snaps in the game. And I'm not saying that he should play more. I think generally, he is a talented wide receiver, and he showed that in Detroit. He hasn't showed it in New York yet, but he's talented. I think Kadarius Toney should be on the field more too as well, but he's coming back from an injury, and we'll have to see. This is the first coach that I've really had faith in the past since McAdoo's first season when they went 11-5 somehow, but. We'll see. I think the train is moving forward, and it's been moving backwards for a long time. So.
Yeah, Brian, you got a favorite NFL team?
I grew up as a Colts fan because of Peyton Manning, but I've since not really cared much. I covered a lot of Jets games last year, so I'm a bit invested in just because I know who the team is and I'm following them. I mean, they're a disaster. I think.
Yes.
It's fair to say about that.
I think Zach Wilson will come back. It'll be better. There's too much talent on that team for them to play this badly. But the schedule's also tough. I think everyone said before the season the schedule's tough. They lose 2 out of 3 games, and everyone's freaking out like they were playing. They were playing Wagner all 3 weeks. It's. I think it'll shore up. They're missing their quarterback, whatever. But I feel bad for Jets fans. I really do. I don't know how they keep doing this. I really don't.
I always have this debate about having no hope from the beginning of the year And which one's better? Like having no hope from the beginning of the year or having an absolutely gut-wrenching, brutal playoff loss. And that's the difference between being a Jets fan and being a Cowboys fan. So, or a Giants fan and a Cowboys fan in the last like couple years.
See,
so
I like no
I always
hope.
have that debate.
I like no hope because last time I walked into the game thinking like we can win this and go through and be 3-0, like and be an undefeated team after 3 weeks, and then reality.
Yeah, but that hope. That kernel of hope you have is like that's the whole point of being a sports fan. That's the whole point. Why are you protecting your feelings? You could hold that beautiful kernel of hope. And look, yeah, they're gonna lose and it's gonna suck and you're gonna feel like garbage for a day or two. But next week you always have that kernel.
Oh, I did not protect my feelings. Everyone who was in the room and in the next room knew my feelings.
Never protect your feelings. Let yourself feel every loss. And it's part of being a sports
I'm professional in the press box, but outside of the press box, I'm probably the worst person to watch a game with because you will know exactly how I feel about every play.
Watch some Portuguese soccer with me. You'll feel the same.
I will.
Yeah.
That's right. You're a soccer fan, right?
Huge soccer fan. Yeah, it's my main sport. And Portugal lost to Spain today. Like whatever.
Portugal's in the World Cup, right?
They're in the World Cup. Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to disappoint me immensely, like they always do. But
They won Euro 2016. I remember that.
yes, somehow.
Somehow?
Yeah.
At least you're not Italy right now, losing to North Macedonia, not getting in.
Yeah, but
I was in Italy over the summer, and I was talking to I think it was one of the drivers or whatever, like Uber or whatever. Like I was trying to be friendly, and I just completely forgot Italy didn't make the World Cup. So I said I'm looking forward to the World Cup, and I think he laughed. So I was like, oh God, that's the bad sports fan in me. But
everyone just assumes Italy's in. It's not.
and they won Euro last year. So
Yeah, it's a big drop off. Yeah.
Is the U.S.
crazy.
even in the next World Cup?
Yeah, they're in. They tied today with Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
Yeah, not a great result, but these.
I saw that actually. They were playing in Spain, which made no sense. U.S., Saudi Arabia.
They're just trying to make some money off from international fighters. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian Fonseca, member of NJ Advanced Media. You can see him on NJ.com, among other places. And that'll be all for today. Join us next time on Keeping Score for more sports recaps. Make sure to follow the Daily Targum on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more content.